What is going on, NSG community? How are you? This is my second NSG live. I'm really excited to be bringing this to you. So let's kick straight into it, because I'll be honest, I was running a little bit behind with this one, so my apologies. However, the topic is still going to be the same. The topic is on boundaries. So I guess I will go ahead and give you all a little bit of context as to how I came up with this one. So the topic came from a couple of discussions that I was having with individuals around challenges that they were having, feeling like no one ever was kind of looking out for them. Like they were constantly giving, people just constantly wanted to take, and they felt that it was hard to continue to keep up with this because their needs weren't being met. And what often happens when we're constantly, you guys have heard the saying about pouring into others' cups and you need yours refilled. That's exactly what happens with our boundaries. We need to focus, we need to focus on ourselves as well. And boundaries helps us to do that. So you have friends and you have loved ones and you have people that you constantly want to give to, and you find yourself drained at the end of the day. And you turn around and it's like, dare you say that you can't do something for someone one particular time after the 10 other things that you've done? Now they're upset. Well, we got to put up boundaries. This is why it is very necessary for you to really pay attention to your own personal inventory. And I posted on this some months back about your own capacity, because if you find yourself feeling like, well, what the hell, this person is so ungrateful and like I'm pissed, that's probably because you were giving more than you had. And that really falls back on you and not the person on the receiving end. And that's something that's a hard check for me. I'm sure it'll be a hard check for some of y'all to say, listen, them feeling pissed about me not being able to give the 11th time, knowing that I gave all other 10, is not really on them. This is on me, because I didn't establish clear boundaries. I didn't say, hey, listen, I'm going to help you up until this point, or this is what I can do, or this is when I can help. And when I say X, Y, or Z, I just need you to respect it. And what they choose to do with it after that is on them. But you have to hold firm no matter how bad we feel. And that's actually one of the larger reasons why I wanted to bring this discussion to the forefront, because when we're talking about enforcing our boundaries, it can make us feel bad. If it's someone that's in need and we love them and we care about them and we have to say no because we know, yes, we are going to church, okay? This is one of those times where it's like we know our needs. We know where we stand. And if you don't show up for yourself, then what do we expect? How do we expect anybody else to show up for us and respect us when it's like, okay, you tell them, I can't come over to help out with whatever after 9 o'clock. Like, this is my prayer time. This is my me time. This is my zone out time. But then 5 days out the week after 9 o'clock, you over their house helping them because they have another drama, right? And it's usually the same kind of thing. It's like, oh, okay, you got yourself into this again and you calling me again. And I love you. I want to show up. But you keep, we think that the person keeps disrespecting our boundaries when it's really you. You're not holding firm to it, so you're not showing the person that you're serious. And that's a hard one. So I was trying to think of examples to come to show you guys. I'm looking in the chat to see. So if y'all have any examples of challenges that you had with trying to enforce your boundaries, throw it in the chat. I'll look at it. I'll also share a personal one and how I had to coach myself through. So looking at the chat. Yeah, we and then figuring out the way that we tend to figure it out is because we find ourselves exhausted, usually because some argument has happened. We felt someone was ungrateful and we're just tired. And now it's like, oh, damn, the realization hits us that it was like, it's not that person, it was me. Time and time again, they reach out and I show up. That's really on me. So, personal share on how I had to coach myself through it was with saying no with money. All right, that was a hard one. So saying no with money. I would find myself in situations where people would come to me and they would give me tell me their story, right? I don't want to make it sound like the stories were made up. They would tell me a situation that they were struggling with, and I'm like, okay, well, I can help you out here. It started with an offer, right? Me offering and saying, I can help you out here. And then that story began to stretch and it went into, well, now they're asking me. And then I'm still giving. Resentment starts to creep in a little bit, and here's when. So in this particular situation with this person that I'm thinking of, I started to notice, I'm like, okay, so you're asking for particular things, and yet I see you hanging out. I see you socializing. I see you doing X, Y, and Z. If we're talking about money, then I think budgeting would also come into play. And how about you budget yourself a little bit better so that I don't have to be your bailout? And I didn't say that to the person. Let's be clear. I'm like, I love this person. I don't want them to feel bad. I don't want them to feel like I'm clocking their pockets, right? This is what I was dealing with. So I was feeling away. I didn't communicate it. And the struggle had me frustrated. And then I had to ask myself, I'm like, why am I frustrated? You know, when I'm coaching myself, one of the first questions that I ask myself is a why question. So it was, why am I frustrated? And I found out that I was frustrated because I had not been clear on what my start and stop was with this person. And even though it was a money situation, there is a start and a stop. The start for me was when I offer it to you. If you need it and accept it, then so be it. The stop is if I'm finding that you're consistently asking and I'm also seeing a disconnect in your need and your social life. Like, that should have been communicated, because I'm not a bank. And I went deeper. So I said, okay, Denise, well, now that you know that answer, why does that bother you? And I realized it bothered me because I felt used. And so then I had to ask another why question. It's like, what about this makes you feel used? And for me, the answer was actually realizing that if I needed something, I don't think I could go to that person. If I was in need of money, I didn't think I can go to that person. You know, I think that the way that their lifestyle was set up, they had come to see me as the person to give to them, and they wouldn't be able to reciprocate. And that started to make me question how far I had come to stretch myself. And I'm like, all right, well, now that I know this, what am I going to do about it? Right? Because we can either sit in complain mode, right? Preach. Yes, we can either sit in complain mode or we can do something about it. So that part, the answer came rather fast. And I'm sure for many of you, y'all would be able to guess what I needed to do next. However, the act of doing it was so hard, y'all, seriously. And this is why I wanted to talk about the topic of boundaries, because we can figure out what our boundaries are, but to enforce it and maintain it, like give it some longevity, that takes a lot of work. So I had a conversation and I said, okay, you know what? I just can't do it anymore. And of course the person wanted to know a lot of why. And I had to straight up say, listen, the why. Well, I wasn't fully authentic in my communication to this person in hindsight, right? I just wanted to stop. So I was in pissed off mode and I was communicating from that place. And of course, we know that's not always the best place to communicate from. However, it was the start that I needed to get on the track to respecting my own boundaries. So my start was a little rocky in that I'm like, the why is really irrelevant. Just know that I'm not doing it. This is not a real need. I'm seeing you out hanging out. It's not that serious for you then. So no, I can't do it anymore. And And then I had to hold to the no. And I had to hold to the no in the face of criticisms. I had to hold to the no in the face of other people coming to me and saying, well, Denise, why are you doing this? You don't need to be like that, and help the person out. Meanwhile, I'm just like, you guys wouldn't show up for me, couldn't show up for me, or wouldn't show up for me if I needed this. So I need you to exit this situation with me and this person, and let me be. And that's what I said to them on the outside. But let me tell y'all, on the inside, I was struggling. I felt like shit. I felt like I was a bad person. I felt like, Denise, if you have it, so what if they're going out and they're partying, maybe they're coping. Like, I started to rationalize all the different reasons why another person was overusing me, right? Was using me too much. I started to rationalize that with a whole bunch of maybe this and maybe that. And I had to really tell myself, okay, if you go back on your own word and you give, what are you going to be left with? And what is that really saying now that you've kind of enforced this, you've put this boundary into place and saying that you're not doing it anymore? And that was really hard. That was really hard because I knew I wouldn't feel good about it. So now I'm conflicted with what I'm feeling versus what the rest of the outside world is coming to me with and telling me how I'm not showing up in the way that I should. Listen, let me tell you, I even had some comments about Christian faith. And I'm like, you're really laying it on thick, trying to make me feel guilty. And this happened. This went on for a long time, you guys. One good thing that came of this, though, was the longer I heard the comments from other people, I went through a phase where I was feeling bad about it and I was second guessing my decisions. And I had to have a buffer in place, right? So what I'm feeling bad about, I need to have something to offset it. And I offset it with the fact that I knew I was doing this for my own comfort. I knew that I was doing this because if I continue to give, and sometimes I was giving when I didn't have, just because I'm like, I know I can recoup. I know I can get it again. So I'll stretch this. I started to tell myself, listen, you have to look out for you first. If you continue to give, you will have nothing for yourself when you need. And that was the buffer. And I had to keep saying it to myself because the words was coming in strong, and the way that they were hitting me, it was heavy. This is, I'll share this, say this was family, who would mention these things. This was family. A couple of close friends would ask me, well, Denise, are you sure? And I'm like, in the face of loved ones, you still have to say no. Over time, when I realized that was now no longer a major plague of mine, it was easier for me to set up boundaries in other areas because I had done it with family. And I'm like, okay, this is what it feels like to hold firm to something. So then it became a matter of now me being able to put up boundaries and hold to them with my time, with my time, with my energy in particular projects, and my conversations and guidance. I put boundaries up on, I have this thing where it's like, if you're in need and you come to me, I'm going to talk to you once, twice, maybe 3 times. But after the 3rd time and there's no action, it's like, I'm going to respect that you're not at a place to where you're ready to do much about it. And that's okay. So I will love you from a distance. And when you're ready, now because of my boundaries, I can't come back to Denise unless I'm ready to be in action mode. And that feels great for me. People may take it all kind of ways, but for me, it's one of the most filling things I have, because I know when I give suggestions, advice, and guidance, I'm giving it from the heart. And pulling words from the heart is taxing on you because you're taking in the stories and you're pulling out your words from a place inside. And when you see people coming to you asking about the same thing over and over again, that's a mental drain that I'm just not with. Looking through the chats, I see Sugar Shay saying that you've personally been assessing what is the foundation. If you want to share more, feel free. I see Natural Beauty is sharing that that's one that she's struggling with, saying no to loved one. Yeah, that one's really, really hard. Feel free to add a little bit on. I am answering questions on this as well. Scrolling back through. Yeah, having the right to ask someone to reciprocate, and sometimes people can't. That is a big one. That's a big one. And usually the givers struggle with receiving. That's another one, okay? That also falls under the guise of boundaries. And I'm saying this to each one of us on this live and those who are going to watch it later. When we start to extend ourselves in any capacity, whether it be through our time, our discussions, our conversations, or our funds, we also need to be in a place to receive and to request. We also have to know when we're feeling stretched in particular areas and then ask. Once we feel that pull, and the pull usually comes, a short shot tail that you feel that you're being pulled is when you get an attitude about something. Okay, so if somebody's asking you to do something and then you get an attitude behind it, but you do it anyway, that is your subconscious telling you, hey, you probably should enact a boundary. There is something you probably should do here. And at that point, stop, reflect, and figure out what boundary are you going to set. And from there, find out what you need to get you back to baseline, to get your shoulders kind of relaxed again, to get your head in the game to where you're giving and you're doing from your heart without any resentment attached to it. And that ask can be, hey, okay, listen, I'm going to give you, if it's money, I'm going to give you 20. You got to figure out where to get the other 20 from. And I'm going to say this, I want the 20 back. If I don't get it back, here's what's going to happen. You've made a request. If the person obliges, then now you are starting to feel like you can continue to build your trust with this person and continue to support, because that's also something that happens when we feel that that we're being used. Trust goes out the window. So boundaries also help us to build trust with people, because if they can respect it, then we know that they're trustworthy. There can be a number of other ways that you also ask and receive when you're trying to uphold your boundaries. It's like whatever you're setting in place, if there is a request that you want with it, attach that request to it. If it's about advice, there's another one where it's like, okay, you're asking me for advice. I just want to let you know I'm going to do this for you. I love you. I hear you. I feel for you. I'm going to do this before I go, because it takes so much of me to share things with you and to go deep with you. Before we do that, I just want to understand how ready for change are you before I share. Because if you're still a little unsure because the situation is fresh, it just happened, that's okay. But what I'm going to actually ask is that you come back to me and ask me for suggestions when you're ready. And right now, let's just say I was a listening ear for you. That is an ask. And if the person delivers on that, then you received, and you are now starting to feel, rebalance in a situation. And you also have to hold to it, right? So in that situation, if the person is telling you, well, I think I'm kind of ready, and you know in your mind you need them to be at an absolute point of readiness, then do not yield on that. Just be the listening ear and let them find someone else. We are resilient people. We will find someone else. Let me go back to the chat. Yes, when my BF invited her show, have a corporate response. Wow. Things like that, where you are constantly showing up for others and you're kind, and you think that the relationship with someone is tighter than what it is, and then things like forgetting your birthday, things like forgetting important days, yeah, that hurts. And you realize you give and give and give to these people, and they can't remember the things that matter most. That's a time to enact a boundary. That's a time to have a conversation, and then put up a boundary, because our boundaries are all about protecting ourselves and our spaces. It's hard enough for us as individuals to live and to maintain our own sanity without having to deal with somebody else's stuff, bringing their stuff on as well, knowing that your cup is not going to be refilled in any particular way. What questions do we have out here? This is when I start talking, I never know where it's going to go. I never know what I'm going to share, but y'all are giving me life. So thank you. So what questions or thoughts or anything come up for you guys as it relates to this topic of boundaries? Or what other experiences would you like to share? One other thought, I'm looking down at my notes. One other thought that I wanted to bring in here was the being honest with yourself. And I know I touched on it a little bit. However, I can't jump on it enough. And I see a question. How can I build healthy boundaries from the gym? Oh, yes, I like this question. Okay, and it kind of connects to the being honest with yourself, right? So being upfront and honest with whatever the situation is. So let's say we'll use a friendship. If you're meeting someone new and you're like, okay, I think this person is cool, I'm vibing out. You know that with friendships comes sharing, giving, all of these things. So start thinking about what you want in a friend, what you're willing to give, what you're willing to do for them, and say it up front. And right, it can sound a little weird to say in conversations, and that's part of the reason why I think so many of us find ourselves in these spaces where we're oversharing, overgiving, because we don't talk about it at first. And it's like, one of the things I would suggest is add it into the conversation in a crafty way. I would probably do something like, if I just meet somebody and I think they're cool, and I'm like, all right, let's see. I'm like, you know what, girl, listen, I have been working on myself so much that I'm in the space where now I'm all about my boundaries, and it is with anybody. And like, I meet people and I always find that I end up having these conversations where I have to let them know, hey, I get drained really easy. I'm all about helping people, but only when you want to be helped. So I have to let people know, and you take this one too, because I'm talking to you too, right? I have to let people know that I'm not with it. If you just want to vent, then you just need to tell me up front, and I will ask you, what are we doing right now? Are we venting or are we trying to solve? Okay. So that way I know what headspace to get myself in, because it's draining for me. Right. And that's an example of something that I would actually say. So I would start it off as like a conversational piece, and then make sure that there is a point in there where I'm like, this applies to you too. And then I like to sit back and hear what people say, because their initial responses to it will also help you understand how you need to operate going forward. So if I'm having a conversation with someone and they're like, no, yeah, but then if they hit me with a but in this situation, for me, it's usually something that raises my eyebrow and makes me want to ask more questions. So if they say, yeah, but sometimes people just don't really know what they need. And sometimes, you just have to give a little bit. That's when I say, you know what? In those cases, it can be true. And this is why we're all on our own personal journeys. And I have done a lot of work to the point where I'm past the not knowing phase. Like, I really try to be intentional about letting people know where I am when I'm sharing. And this is also the thing that I expect from my friends or from my family. So that way, because that but is I look at the but as like the person telling you a little bit about where they are in the space, which then gives you a glimpse as to what they may introduce into your space when you're talking about your boundaries. So it's like you're reaffirming what you said. It's like, I hear you, and this is not a knock on wherever anyone is in their journey. However, for me, I know that it's hard for me to deal with giving advice back and forth and seeing people not do anything with it, because I'm giving a large portion of my care and concern. If it comes down to, let's take the birthday thing, an acknowledgement of things that are important to you, saying this up front, like, I'm big on my birthday. I love it when people remember this or that about it. I love it. Oh, well, real life example. I'm big on my birthday. I am. And I'm big about other people's birthdays. So if you're in my circle, I want you to celebrate me the same way that I'm going to get hyped and celebrate you. And if you don't, at this stage in the game, I'm okay with pushing you to the back burner, because now that means that there is a huge part of me that doesn't reach your care radar high enough. Care radar is not a real thing, but it is for me, right? It's not that high on your radar of concern, whether that be because you don't care enough about it or what. As a friend of mine, if you know that I care about it and you love me, this is something that you would support me around. And if you can't, that's okay, because that may be your own boundary. That then just means that in terms of the friendship, there's not this equal give and take here. And we should reevaluate what kind of relationship this really is. And those are the hard things that many of us struggle with. And I'll say in certain areas, I still struggle with to date. So yeah, that's one of the suggestions that I have about starting boundaries from the onset. I have another question in here. The original question, was it pushing or disrespecting someone's boundaries? If asked for them to reciprocate, what do you do for them? So the original topic was around respecting your own boundaries, and it started off with how to establish them and then how to uphold to them. And then the question that I was just responding to was around setting boundaries from the onset. Like, how do you come into a situation and set boundaries from the onset? So the reciprocation piece to your question, I would say reciprocation comes in from the other person. This is when you ask the person what it is that they need. You're telling your story. You're speaking for yourself. And when it comes down to reciprocation, it goes into, well, what is it that you need? You heard what I'm saying. You hear where I'm at. How does that land for you? I usually will start with how does that land for you? Because I want to hear how they're processing and make sure they understood what I said. And then I go into what do you need? So that's how we start this reciprocation train. And it's like, I'll hear what you say. And I now have to be honest with myself to figure out if I can reciprocate truly or not. Because there's a difference, right? There's a difference in you saying that you want to be able to and you try. As people, at our core, we are good-hearted. We really are, and we want to try. The situations when things start to shift is because good-intended people weren't honest with themselves. They tried to deliver for someone and tried to meet a need and fell short, and now people are hurt. Now imagine having that happen to you throughout life, time and time and time again. It starts to harden and shift how you view individuals. So I really do feel like even if there is a friend or a new situation that you're establishing, whether it be intimate relationship or just a friendship, when you hear what their ask is, be honest with yourself to figure out if you can deliver it. And if you can't answer that on the spot, ask them for time. Ask them to give you a little bit. Tell them, you know what, that's a really interesting point. I haven't really given that much thought. Hell, I don't even want to hold you. Let me see how that plays out for me, if I can deliver on that. And these conversations may sound a little weird to people up front, like at first. However, when it becomes part of your norm and when you become more comfortable with checking in and figuring out what you can and can't do, can and can't give, you feel more balanced. And I promise you, the people that you are engaged in relationships with, they will feel it too. I hear my friends tell me all the time that they notice a difference in my behaviors because I'm responding to my needs so much more. And then what starts to happen is you start to realize your circle starts to mimic the same thing, right? Because if you guys are really close and bonded that way, you're either going to grow closer together and start to mimic each other's behaviors in that way. And if the behaviors are each person's looking out for themselves while also being honest about what they can give, then that's where the direction goes. And then there are those that can't ride the train with you anymore. And guess what? That means that their time in your life has been completed. And celebrate the friendship, celebrate the relationship for what it was when it was. And please, on everything, I beg of you, allow it to go away. Because that right there, holding on to something that no longer fits your current state of existence, is only doing more damage to you. And those tend to be situations that you want to talk about boundary busters. Those situations will pull at every boundary that you have. And it's only because you knew what you should be doing. You knew what place you were at, and you weren't respecting your own. So I hope that answered the question. I want her to answer my question. And so I don't want to say the name wrong, but the creator. Oh, the creator. That's so cute. Tell me if I answered your question, because I want to make sure I hit it. Okay, I see you asked another question. So what if your partner is giving you boundaries or less access to them than the amount of access they give to their friend? Ooh, they give to their friends. How do you deal with that? Well, so I'm going to give you a couple of coaching questions, and this is going to be for you. Anyone else who feels this is helpful, please take them. So to the creator, what I would ask you first is, how does that make you feel? And you don't have to answer on here. But it's seriously, how does that make you feel? And process that. Like, if you need to write it down, how does it make you feel? Then I would ask you to reflect on, what do you think that says about your relationship? And then after you know how it makes you feel, after you know what does it say about your relationship too, in your mind, only do one-sided responses, because sometimes with our good-hearted nature, we try to answer questions for other people. I can tell you guys from experience, stop doing it. It's a waste of time. You'll get it right some days and you won't other days. It's not worth the headache. So you ask those two questions, then go further and say, okay, now how big of a deal is this for me? Scale that out. If it's something that you can, after you've answered the questions, if it's something that just a little bit of your own processing helped you to be okay with, then fine. Odds are it probably will lead to something you want to bring up. So then now you have information that you can take to your partner and have a conversation with and say, listen, here's my observations. Share exactly what you've been observing. And I like to encourage people to share the hardcore facts, like, whatever actually happened, and then add your feelings to it. So we have, let's say it's a Monday movie night, right? On our Monday movie night, I was looking forward to spending this time with you. You hung out with your friends an extra 2 hours. That cut into our time. So that's the gist of it. So it's like Monday movie night, you came home at 10, you were supposed to be, or you told me you was going to come home at 8. And I was sitting up waiting for you, and I was really looking forward to it. And when you came home 2 hours later, I was a little disappointed, or I was disappointed. And I'm just wondering. So now you go into the conversation, whatever it is that you're wondering. I'm wondering, how you're feeling about what your take is on the amount of time that you're spending with your friends and how that's impacting our relationship, or something to that, to get the conversation going. And then you go in and share what your ask is. And be very honest about your ask. So no matter what they say, if they say that they don't really see it as a big problem, then it's probably going to be a little bit tougher for you to represent your request. However, you got to show up for yourself and say, well, listen, this means a lot to me because whatever it means, whatever the reason is. And here's what I'm asking of you. And I'm wondering if this is something that you can keep up with, if this is something that you can uphold. And then you got to allow them the time to show you. And that can be difficult for some of us. However, we got to give them some room. If they're saying they're going to get it, people are human. They're going to make a mistake here or there. So we got to give them a little bit of time to show us. However, there should be a concrete understanding of what's happening. So if this person is like, you know what, only in the event of serious emergencies will I miss this, because this is our agreed upon day. This is me and you time. So that would be the only thing that would get in the way. Then hold to that and check them in a loving way when they don't. And if it becomes a pattern, then there is a piece that you know now, especially if it's important to you, that it's just not in alignment. It's just not in alignment. And you can try to have conversations again. You can try to, depend on how long this relationship or how invested in the relationship you are, you can try to seek outside support, because that's always a great route to go before you throw the whole situation out. Sometimes we run away too quick without having communicated. So communicate what your need is and the why, and then see what they say. So I hope that answered the second question, the creator. I really actually like the way that name is written. So I have another question. I also want to throw in my tactics. Okay, so we got a suggestion on the table. Yes. Okay, so one of the tactics is this what is bothering me, or is it something deeper? Absolutely. Yes. So when I say be honest with yourself and start with a why question, or start with a what does this mean for me? Or you have to go that deep. You really have to go that deep. That was a great one. So I'll say it again for everyone. It is this what's bothering me, or is it something deeper? And then the second part is, sometimes I get upset with something simple, but something as simple as time, but it may be quality versus quantity. Absolutely. And it is the quality that's really at the heart of your matter. And that's the thing that when we have the conversation, that's the thing that we should be communicating. It's not the amount of times or the quantity behind it. It's the quality. It's how much value I place on this. This is why I'm hurt. And if we can communicate this to people, you'll be surprised how they respond. And if they don't respond in a way that is suitable for you, then that's also life telling you this was not your situation, and that's okay. Right? I'm not saying just leave after the first conversation. No, but I'm saying if we repeatedly see the same patterns, honor yourself. Honor yourself and the standards that you have, the boundaries that you put up, and be okay to move on, transition on to something greater. Folks, I hope this talk was helpful. I hope that you have something to take away. I know that I did. From looking at some of the comments in here, there was a lot of people could relate. So thank you. And we had a couple of good shares as well. Oh, wait, I don't want to leave anybody out. So, okay. Oh, wait, I did answer that question. My apologies. All right, folks, I'll be back on next Sunday. What I'm going to ask from your friends or whoever you want to kind of pull some info from is, what topics should I talk about next? My thing is around coaching and success blockages. What I mean by success blockages is there is something in the way of us reaching our greater selves, right? If there's a desire that you have, if there's recurring thoughts that you have, feelings that you're struggling with, typically there is something in the way of it. And when I'm coaching one-on-one, I'm hitting for that. I'm going for that. It's the thing that we tend to hide and shy away from, and we bury really deep. And what we say is, you know what? We layer it with these, I call them faux affirmations, right? I'm not trying to be insulting, but I'm being honest. I call them faux affirmations. We layer them with these things where it's like, you know what? I got this. I'm great. I'm good. Are you though? Are you? Because if you were, then how is it that last week you were here, 2 months ago you was in the same space? What is the it that you're not getting to? And that's what I really like to do with the coaching sessions, in the most loving and compassionate way. But I'm still going there. And it's for, and when sessions are done with clients, I think one of the beautiful things that I love to see is hearing clients tell me, this is where I'm at, this is the questions that I asked. I had a situation, you come in for coaching in one area, and then it's like, this came up, and I put in all these questions, I asked these questions, I made this assessment of myself, and then I acted in this way. So when we are, my overall goal is, okay, you come in with one goal that you want to achieve. However, by the time we're done, you should have a roadmap for how to move blockages out your way on your own, which is kind of like counterproductive to my business in a way, in that I'm giving you the tools that you need to continue going forward on your own without me. However, so I talk about my faith. I'm a strong believer in God, and I feel like this is what He's telling me to do. And He doesn't charge me for any of the advice He gives me. And Lord knows, my tab runs real long with Jesus. So paying it forward in that way. So bring me some questions that you would like me to kind of explore. The last week in January, which is next week, I'm actually going to accept someone in as a guest, and we'll do a little bit of a mini coaching session, like a really mini one. So if there is any questions that you have, or any particular struggle that you have, and you're willing to be on live with it and willing to be honest and authentic, then please feel free. Toxicity. Yep. Let me get that one down. Imposter syndrome. See, I love imposter syndrome because I realize that doesn't just show itself in one area. Like, I fix it in one area, and the next thing I know, imposter syndrome shows its head in a whole different area of my life. And I'm like, I'm back at work again. Like, this is ridiculous. On that note, hit me up in the DMs. Let me know what other thoughts or what other topics I should talk about. And y'all, thank you so much. And remember the mantra, never stop growing. Good night, y'all.